You know, we're using the word leader so much that I'm not sure it means anything anymore. Companies are using it more than ever because it sounds good. Our leadership team, our leadership meeting, our senior leaders. But here's my question. Are all these people actually leading? What if your title disappeared tomorrow? You couldn't evaluate your people anymore. You couldn't control their schedule or tell them what to do. Would they still follow you? Because management and leadership aren't the same thing. Management is a job. Leadership is a capability. A company can appoint you manager. A company can call you a leader. A company can put you in its leadership meetings. A company can give you 50 people to oversee, but none of that means you've learned how to lead human beings. Welcome to another episode of the Leading Life Podcast, where we talk practical wisdom for leadership and life. I'm your host, Andy Zook, and I've learned that leadership is about how we show up for people, how we navigate change, and how we continue growing. Right now, on today's episode, managers dressed in leadership uniforms. You are listening to the Leading Life Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Zook, and as I always promise, no fluff, no empty motivation. I want to give you real, actionable steps that you can use today to become better at what you do. And you know what? I started this podcast because I was tired of working under people who were clueless about leading us. And worse, most of them didn't even care about their employee success at all. So today we're taking away the title, we're taking away the authority, we're taking away the leadership uniform, and we're going to find out what's really underneath it. So let's begin with an important distinction to start this off. Management is a job. Leadership is a capability. And so when I look back over all the bosses I had in my career, if I had to estimate it from my own experience, I'd probably say 90% were primarily managers. Yeah. That high. Some of them were really good managers. There's nothing wrong with that. But maybe 10% would be what I would describe as genuine leaders. And there's an important difference. Management is primarily about responsibility and execution. A manager is formally accountable for staffing, schedules, budgets, performance, processes, standards, results, communication, compliance, all of those things, right? Leadership, though, is primarily about influence and direction. So a leader gets people to willingly move towards something better. They create clarity, they earn trust, they develop capability, they make the decisions, they model the standards, and they challenge our thinking. And they help people accomplish things they might not have accomplished without them. I don't think there's any more important part of this than that. And even more importantly, you can be appointed a manager, but you can't really be appointed a leader. The organization can give you authority. It can give you a title, an office, direct reports, and permission to make the decisions, but other people ultimately determine whether you have influence with them. That's the thing I want you to remember. Someone can run a tight operation. They can schedule payroll correctly. They can hit their targets. They can complete performance reviews, execute corporate initiatives, and still create very little trust, growth, and inspiration. That leader could potentially be a great manager and a weaker leader. Conversely, you've probably known an hourly employee whom everybody went to when things got difficult. They calmed people down, they taught new employees, they challenged bad ideas respectively, and they raised everybody else's standards. They didn't have any impressive title, no big office, no leadership uniform, but everybody knew who the leader was. Let's also not make management the bad guy. That's where some leadership conversations go wrong, when people think manager equals bad and leader equals enlightened visionary. Nope, great management is enormously valuable because somebody has to make the vision come to life. Some charismatic leaders are terrible managers. They inspire everybody. They generate 1,000 ideas and they give stirring speeches, and then they leave organizational wreckage behind them because they can't execute, prioritize, follow through, and create the systems necessary. The best people bosses eventually learn to become both. And that's what I want to highlight today. That's where we're going to go with this. What should someone actually have to demonstrate before we call them a leader? So I'm going to propose 5 tests to walk you through today to help you get there. Number 1, do people trust you when they don't have to? Yeah, that's where leadership begins. Not charisma, not confidence, not a title, trust. Anybody can produce compliance when they control the schedule, the paycheck, the promotion, and the reviews. But what happens when people have a choice? Do they tell you what they really think? Do they bring problems to you before those problems become disasters? Can someone disagree with you without worrying that you'll punish them later? Do you keep your word? And so on. Do people trust what you say when you're not telling them what they want to hear? Trust isn't built by big inspirational speeches. It's in hundreds of tiny interactions. You said you'd follow up, did you? You said you'd keep something confidential, did you? You promised you'd support somebody, did you? Leadership credibility is built in inches, and sometimes it can be destroyed in seconds. Trust me, I've seen that happen. So let's test number 1. Do people trust you when they don't really have to? Test number 2, do people become better because they've worked with you? This might be my favorite test of leadership. I think it's the most important to me. Look at the people you've led. What happened to them? Ask yourself, did their confidence grow? Did their skills improve? Did they take on bigger responsibilities? One of the biggest things that's most important to me is, are they having a successful life in general? Not just at work, but outside of work. They're happy. They have time with their family. Things like that. They're doing well financially. All that's important. Remember, weak bosses can accidentally create dependency. Every decision comes through them. Every problem requires their approval. Every idea needs their blessing. And then the boss says, my team can't do anything without me. Maybe that's not evidence of how valuable you are. Maybe it's evidence of what you haven't developed with the team yet. Great leaders aren't threatened when someone underneath them becomes exceptional. They're proud of it. They don't need to remain the smartest person in the room. They need to build more smart people. I remember I had this assistant manager once said, there's people underneath you that are now getting ahead of you. Doesn't that bother you? And I go, why would it bother me? That's exactly what I wanted to happen. So ask yourself, are people stronger because they've worked with me? All right, test number 3, can you create clarity when things are uncertain? There's always going to be uncertainty. Anybody can look at a leader when everything's going well, the numbers are good, everybody's staffed, customers are happy, the plan is working. Where leadership gets tested is when the map stops matching the territory. So something goes wrong, priorities can change, people become nervous, information is incomplete out there. Now everybody starts looking around. Well, what are we doing? A leader doesn't need to pretend they know everything. In fact, false certainty can destroy credibility. So sometimes leadership can sound like, hey, you know what? I don't know yet, but here's what we do know. Here's what matters most right now. Here's what we're going to do next. And I'll update you when I know more. That's leadership. You don't have to eliminate the uncertainty. You just have to create enough clarity for people to move through it. Years ago, we had this information come out in our company that another brand was going to be moving in to the very department store that we were already in. So it was going to be another optical coming in certain locations, right? So we didn't even get like any kind of announcement or anything like that. It was a press release that went out before our company had even sent out a memorandum. So people start freaking out and there's noise on social media and different platforms. And so finally I see that we have a conference call the first thing in the morning and everybody gets on the call and everybody's like, what are we going to do? Oh my God, other companies coming in and they're going to take our jobs, blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm going to tell you first off that none of that ever happened. And that company that did that didn't last even a year. And we were still the strong foothold in that department store. Everybody was worried through all this uncertainty. And I finally just spoke up at the end of the call and I said, listen, everybody go to work today and polish the brand. Everybody go in and do your best and be the best ambassador for our company. If you want to eliminate the competition, then you do better today. The name on the door is the company that we represent. Test 4. Will you accept responsibility and share credit? This one tells me a tremendous amount of information about a person, because when things go wrong, where does the blame travel? And when things go right, where does the credit travel? Weak leadership tends to push the blame downward and pull credit upward. My team just didn't execute, or they didn't understand. Nobody told me what was going on. And when the numbers are great, they're like, yeah, look what I did. Strong leadership reverses the flow. When things go wrong, a leader asks, what could I have communicated better? What did I miss? What did I fail to create clarity around? That doesn't mean employees aren't accountable. Of course they are, but accountability starts at the top. It starts with you. And when things go right, name the people who made it happen. Give them the spotlight. Tell their story. Years ago, I remember being on this conference call and we had this incredible week of sales, right? Which Honestly, we didn't do anything different that week than all the weeks before that we did well. So my boss is like, Andy, what did you guys do? And you know what I said? I have a great team of people making it happen. Other than that, it was dumb luck. And the whole call got quiet, right? But then about 4 or 5 different managers texted me and they're like, thank you for just being honest. So instead of like, oh yeah, I did this and I started doing that, and like, I was just being honest. Look, I have great people that do great work, and we had people come through the door. Simple as that. Remember, secure leaders don't become smaller by making their other people bigger. All right, test 5. Can you influence people without relying on your title? This might be the ultimate test. And imagine if I just take everything away from you. Your title, I'm going to take away your office, your position on the organizational chart, your authority to write somebody up, your ability to control their schedule, the reviews, your ability to do rewards, all of that. Let me ask you, can you still move people? Can you mobilize your team? Will they listen? Will they seek your advice? Will they trust your judgment? And will they follow your example? Because there's a huge difference between I have to listen to Andy because he's my boss, and I want to hear what Andy thinks. One is positional authority, the other is influence, and leadership lives in that difference. So what's the neurology behind this? What's happening in our brain? Well, human beings are constantly evaluating their social environments. Am I safe here? Can I trust this person? Can I disagree? Am I respected? Can I make a mistake? The brain isn't simply processing the words coming from the boss. It's evaluating tone, predictability, facial expression, status, and the potential consequences. When people perceive threat, uncertainty, or social danger, stress systems can become more active. The amygdala is one important part of the brain's threat detection network, while stress responses involve interconnected brain and body systems. And when somebody becomes highly stressed or defensive, the very abilities that you want from them at work can become harder to access effectively. There should be flexible thinking. There should be attention, working memory, creativity, learning, emotional regulation. Now consider the opposite environment. A leader creates reasonable predictability. They communicate clearly and with cadence. They don't humiliate people for their mistakes. They invite disagreement. They recognize good work, and they set standards without creating unnecessary fear. That doesn't mean everybody sits around feeling comfortable all day, because psychological safety isn't the absence of accountability. But a strong leader can challenge you tremendously while making it clear that your dignity isn't on trial. And that's important because people generally perform better when they can devote more of their mental resources to actually solving the problems instead of constantly trying to figure out how to protect themselves from their boss. Leadership isn't about making people feel good. It's about creating conditions when human beings can do great work. If I haven't told you this before, I had an incredible leadership coach that I hired, and she did an assessment on me the very first day. And she put me through like 20 questions about what leadership means. And then she asked me a question about what leadership meant to me. And I gave her my answer. And she stopped and she looked at me and she said, you know what, Andy? I coach a lot of corporate leaders. I coach a lot of different people in different types of work environments. You're the only one that hasn't said, I'm in charge. Now, I want you to think about that, because is that what people got into leadership for? To be in charge? Is that really what was like, that's what they were going for? I don't even think about that as a leader. I think of a much greater responsibility, and I want you to do the same. Here are 5 questions I want you to think about and reflect on. I don't want you to think about your title and what your company calls you. Ask yourself, do people tell me the truth, or do they tell me what I think I want to hear? That one happens a lot more than you think. Are people becoming more capable because they've worked with me? And when things become uncertain, do I create clarity or I add anxiety? When something goes wrong, where does my finger point first? And lastly, if my title disappeared tomorrow, would these people still want my influence in their lives? Don't rush through these questions. They might make you uncomfortable at some point, but that's good. That's probably where you want to spend the most time. And so here is your call to arms for this episode. I want you to pick one person you lead, not the whole team, just one human being, and do one thing this week that makes that person feel stronger. Maybe you give them feedback. Maybe you recognize something they're doing exceptionally well. Maybe you ask them what they want to learn next. Maybe you give them ownership of a project that you've been doing. Even better, maybe you apologize for something you got wrong. Or maybe you just simply down and ask, what could I do differently for you? And what would help you succeed? and then listen. Don't defend. Don't explain. Don't tell them where they're off base. Just listen. Because you don't become a leader when somebody changes your title in the HR system. Leadership is built in interaction by another interaction and another interaction. So tomorrow when you walk into work, don't ask, does my company consider me a leader? Ask the tougher question, which is, have I given my people a reason to consider me one? And if you're brave enough, ask one more. Take away the title, take away the authority, take away that organizational chart. Would anybody still follow me? Remember, management's a job, but leadership is a capability, and capability can be developed. Last thing I wanted to leave you with was I had taken over this team a couple years ago, and I will tell you the core people on that team had been doing this for like as long as I had, probably longer. I had a woman that came from another country who was an engineer in that country, and then I had another gentleman that came from Colombia, and he was an optometrist there. And for me, they were both opticians, but they knew their job incredibly well. They knew what they were doing. So influencing them would be a little more challenging. So I'll tell you when that really came into focus. It was in the middle of COVID. And, these people had been through many managers before. And in COVID, in this time of massive uncertainty, I said, I've got to make sure we all still feel connected and we have clarity behind where we're going. And I needed to be able to give them information and keep them cool and keep them calm and give them hope that we were all coming back to work within hopefully a month or two. So I scheduled daily texts and then I scheduled weekly calls so we could all just talk and I could reassure them on what was going on behind the scenes. Because honestly, I was the only one going into work. They were all furloughed and I was there trying to keep this thing going. So I was letting them know that, hey, we're working, so we have a space for you to come back in a couple of weeks. And eventually we did. But I noticed during that time that their appreciation for me as their leader was like 150%. It was quite a moment. And I will tell you what, during COVID, it was difficult. But the best part of 2020 that I can tell you was that I got to call each of them back to work and we could resume being the great team we were. All right, so that is today's episode. If this podcast made a positive impact on you, share it with someone you think needs to hear it, a boss, a family member, someone who runs a sports team, maybe an orchestra conductor, whoever this can help impact. And I would truly appreciate a quick rating or review on whatever platform you hear me on. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming up next on the Leading Life Podcast. I'm Andy Zook. Remember, I want you to lead with purpose, live with intention, but keep becoming who you were meant to be. And most importantly, go out today, be the hero in somebody's story. All right? I can't wait to talk to you on the next episode. Have a great week. Talk soon. Take care. Bye. degree